with that in mind, but I'm not as sure about some of those things that I was really sure of when I was 39. I had a lot of black and white when I was 39. I've still got black and white, but I've got a fair amount of gray sitting in there. And the years have done that. The way I say it is this, Mark. There is an effect that occurs with the multitude of sunrises and sunsets that only occurs in and through that. You can't learn it in college. You don't learn it in a book. You learn it by getting up and going to bed day after day and watching life happen in front of you. And that's what it's done to me.
Welcome to the Age of Lions podcast, a platform and community dedicated to bringing purpose, strategy, and calling to kingdom-minded people who are 50 plus and excited about their next chapter. Here's your host, Mark Clement.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Age of Lions podcast. So glad that you're joining us. That was Jim Sheppard. He's our special guest today. And you're in for a treat, as you could tell from that little clip. Jim is one of my favorite people on the planet. He is a mentor of mine. He's really been like a father figure to me for years in business and my personal life. He's been through a lot of ups and downs with me. He and his wife, Nancy, are just dear friends and sweet friends to Agenda and I, and we just love them to death. And you're going to get some incredible wisdom from a man who's been around the block a few times and knows what he's talking about. So just get ready for a great interview. Obviously in a different setting tonight. This is not where I'm normally sitting when I'm talking to you. I'm in a hotel room in Brevard, North Carolina. And I talk a little bit about this in the interview with Jim. It comes up because we filmed this last week and I was talking about this trip. But I just wanted to share a little bit about just a little bit of a personal journey that I've been on for the last several months. You've heard me refer to it a couple times in different episodes about the last year, about transition, about changing jobs and starting a new business, and been a lot of change in my life. And through that process, there were some hard times of identity and soul searching and trying to figure out what I was going to do next and what God was trying to teach me and what I was learning and all the things that go along with that. And a few months ago, in fact, it was about the third week of June, I had been working on a hunting trip with my brothers. We try to go to South Dakota and pheasant hunt every couple of years, and we really wanted to do it this year, and we just couldn't quite make it fit. The schedule wasn't working, and just wasn't going to happen, and that became obvious. And I was pretty disappointed. I was looking forward to it. I love my brothers, and I love hanging out with them, and it was something that we really enjoy doing together. But right after that, a friend of mine posted, he and his wife posted on their Facebook page about this trip that he was doing with a ministry called Restoration Project, and Restoration Project's out of Colorado Springs, and they do a lot of men's events, father-son, father-daughter, men on groups together, different ages, all this kind of thing. And he posted about it, and Jenda actually saw it first, and she came to me and she said, I really think there's something on this for you. I think you ought to check it out. So I went and looked at the website, and I called my friend, and I went through it with him and asked him a bunch of questions, and I signed up that day for this trip, and this trip starts tomorrow, which is the day that this episode comes out, on Tuesday, the 16th. But in June, that was a long way off, and I was excited about it, and I signed up, and I made some really significant decisions around this trip. The motivation for the trip, it's a 5-day trip. We're going to be in the woods. It's called a wilderness hike. We're literally off the grid. We're carrying everything we have to take. We will sleep in tents. We will build fires. We will cook by the river, all this kind of thing. And so like carrying 50-pound packs and hiking in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. In fact, we're in the Pisgah National Forest, if that means anything to any of you, the basin. And we're going to get together tomorrow afternoon and head out, and I'm super excited about it. But it was a big decision for me because I was overweight. I was out of shape. I'd had a hard year of sitting on the couch and watching a lot of TV and being not my best self and eating a bunch of junk. And I needed something to kind of get me moving. And this is the kind of thing we talk a lot about in the podcast. We talk about motivation. We talk about the why. And this was a big moment for me to have a why, to get excited about something that was coming, to have something to look forward to, a big trip. And it was going to be a physically challenging trip, a mentally challenging trip, and a spiritually challenging trip. And the hike is, it's all about being out in the wilderness with a bunch of guys. It's about being on your own. It's about taking care of business while you're out there. We're going to do a lot of story work on the trip where we do some identity work and different spiritual soul searching on some things and kind of figuring out who we are and just that ongoing process that Jim and I also talk about in this episode that never stops, no matter how old you are. And I'm super excited about it. But I just wanted to share that with you because when you're watching this, whether it's today, it comes out on Tuesday or later in the week, I want you to be praying for me. I'm just asking for that. I'm submitting myself to you, our community, just asking you to pray for me as I'm on this trip, that I'm with these other guys. I'm the oldest guy on this trip, probably by about a decade at least. There's one of the leaders is, I think, in his early 50s, but everybody else is definitely younger. So I'm the oldest, and I'm excited to go and be a leader. I'm excited to help with some of these younger guys and their stories, but I'm also going to learn, and I'm going to see what God has for me. I'm not a leader on the trip. I'm just going to participate. So pray for me as I'm on this trip, just that I would be the best version of myself, that I would be really open to what God has for me, that I would really have ears to hear, that I would experience him in this beautiful scenery of these mountains and nature. And I'm sure I'm going to have a lot to talk about when I get back, but I just wanted to kind of let you know what I was doing and what was going on with me. And that in real time, this is going to be happening this week while this episode is out. So I appreciate your prayers. I covet them. I'm so grateful for them. And whatever you're praying for me, I receive it. And I thank you for that. So anyway, without further ado, I want to get back to Jim Sheppard. It's going to be an incredible episode. Like I said at the beginning, he's a mentor, a friend, a father figure to me, and I've learned so much from him and continue to. And you'll see why he is that person in my life, and he's going to be that person to you via this podcast. So sit back and enjoy, and we'll talk to you on the other side. Hey, Jim Sheppard, what's up, my friend?
Hey, buddy, it's all good. It's all good. Good to be here with you, and long-time friendship. And man, we've known each other for a minute now.
I know it's 20 plus years at this point, which is crazy to think about.
20 plus.
I had the same conversation with Sean Lovejoy because I met him not long before I met you.
And we both know him.
That's right. In fact, I don't know if you have heard this story, but the way I connected with you guys was at that conference when I was running that conference for him and David Putman.
Yeah, Velocity.
And some of your guys approached me. I don't think you were one of them, but Brad and a couple other guys, I don't remember who all it was, but they were like, someone said you do videos. I'm like, yeah. And we got in a room and I just had my laptop and I wasn't prepared because it wasn't like we planned it. And I showed them some stuff. Next thing I know, you guys are running me all over the country. So that was a good moment.
You did some nice videos for our clients. We enjoyed your work. You did great work, man.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm in the middle of that right now.
Don't do good work and then we wouldn't hire you. That's the way you did not get hired.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, man. This month of September, I am running. I was in Ohio this weekend with one of your clients. I'm going to be in Virginia this weekend with another client. Then I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So it's great.
It is that time. It is that time of year when our clients are doing initiatives and they need nice communications assets. So that's where you come in.
It's awesome. Yeah. Well, hey, we always open this thing out. We ask the same basic question, then we'll get into kind of your specific stuff. But I like to ask people, what was the moment for you in your life when you kind of hit that moment where you thought, I might feel good, I might have a young mindset, but I'm definitely a little older than I would like to think that I am. What was that moment for you when you kind of crossed over and started having that realization and kind of affected how you started to look at your life?
Yeah, I think for me, and I didn't realize it at first that it actually corresponded with something else, but which I'll mention in a second, but it was right around age 60. So I got through my 50s and I was still kind of hard charging. Let's build this. Let's build this. Let's build this. And I came to this realization that it is important what you build, but it's more important what you leave behind.
Yeah.
Right. And so that began to shift my thinking about life, about legacy. I started thinking more and more about legacy. I've always had legacy on my mind. But the thing that happened during that time frame that I didn't realize it at the time. I put my hands on it and identified it a couple of years later that was about the point when my first grandchild was born. And bro, I'm going to tell you something. The lens that you look through life once you have grandchildren, it changes your perspective, and it gives you some things to think about that you might not have thought about previously. I mean, so for example, I started Noah's my first grandchild, and I was like, I want to be at his high school graduation. I want to be at his college graduation. I want to be there when he walks down the aisle with the woman that God chose for him to be his life mate. And, the decisions that I'm making now, especially with regard to health and fitness and other priorities, right, are things that are going to help me to have a better chance to get there. God only knows, by God's grace, we'll make it there. But yeah, that was a shift for me. And the big shift was what I've been building and now start to think about what I'm leaving behind. And that was right around the time I turned 60, which was, a little over 10 years ago.
Yeah. And that's interesting. That's a little bit later than most people say. Most people, it's more like late 40s or 50. But I'm not the least bit surprised.
Slow, bro. I'm a little slow.
No. It's not that you're slow. It's that you're like you said before you start recording, your lifespan, you hope's another 70 years. Like in your head, you're like, I'm just getting started.
Yeah, that is kind of the way it felt. I mean, that might be denial or whatever else it might be, but that's the way I felt.
Yeah.
And, and part of it too, Mark, I mean, part of it was this. So I've told, I spend a lot of time with younger leaders. We can talk about some of that later on. But one of the things I tell younger leaders is I talk about the progression in my life, right? And I use, figuratively speaking, it's not right on these points, but 29, 39, 49, 59. It's kind of when I use it. At age 29, dude, I was the smartest guy in the room. I didn't even question whether I was. And I was in the room with guys that had MBAs from Harvard and all this other stuff. And I've got a degree from the Terry College at the University of Georgia, which is not a bad thing, but it's not a Harvard degree, right? But in my mind, I was the smartest guy in the room.
Sure.
And, I did become a Christ follower at age 28. So that started to work a little bit of change in my 30s. And by the time I was 39, I didn't think I was the smartest guy in the room, but I thought I was probably one of the 3 smartest guys in the room. So that's a little bit of growth, Mark. I mean, just a little bit. By the time that I got to 39 to 49 was a big progression for me because I just wanted to walk into the room and make sure I wasn't the dumbest guy in there.
Yeah.
I realized how much I didn't know.
Yep.
And interestingly, that's when God seemed to really start using me in ministry, was when I just kind of began to think, hey, I don't have the answers, but maybe somebody else does. And then at age 59, I walked to the door of the room and I looked in there and I was like, I don't even know why they even need me in here. Right. And God can really use that. And so, some of it might have been humility. I don't claim that humility is one of my great gifts, but God has certainly rounded off a lot of those edges over the years. And that's really the way you see that is kind of in that 10-year progression from 29 to 59, how that kind of shaped out.
Yeah. I remember I was in an interview a few years ago and we were talking about personality types, disc profile, Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, all the stuff. And, one of the guys that I was talking to, he knew me pretty well and he was looking at my information. He's like, I see these things and I can recognize that you have this, but he said, you don't act like, in my case, a DC or an Enneagram 1 or da-da. And I said, I'd like to think I'm a refined DC, a refined Enneagram 1, because, over time, like you said, those rough edges, one way or the other, if you're paying any attention at all, if you're listening to the Lord at all, if you're listening to your wife at all, that's a big part of it. That sandpaper of, those rough edges hopefully are getting filed down and you do become hopefully a little bit more of the balance of all the things. I think Jesus was all the personalities. He was all the letters, all the numbers.
Yes, he was.
And it is definitely a benefit of getting older, that's for sure. And I wanted to tell you, you haven't got to talk in a couple of months because you've been traveling, but I found out just a few weeks ago that I'm going to be a grandfather for the first time.
Oh, wow. Welcome to the club. It's going to shift. It'll change your perspective, bro. I got 6 of them now. I've got 6 of them now, and 4 of them are girls, 2 of them are boys. And it just changes your perspective about things, man. Kid, you remember how kids change your perspective on life? Grandkids is going to shift it again. And I can't tell you how it's going to shift it for you. I just know it will.
And, my kids are a little older and they hadn't really talked about having children. And I wasn't really worried about it one way or the other. I'm not that kind of parent that's like, when are you going to have a baby? But when my son called me, and it was the last thing I expected him to tell me. I mean, I was shocked when he told me, and I was speechless. And the joy that I feel that only other grandparents understand. It's hard to explain it to people. I cry when I think about it. I cry when I pray. It's going to be a boy. I found that out.
Oh man.
And, it's just, and it wouldn't have mattered, girl, but I'd be just as excited either way. But just thinking about legacy, thinking about things I want to teach him, things I want to pour into his life. all of it. It's just, it definitely is a game changer. No doubt about it. One thing about you that has always been so encouraging to me, and challenging to me in a good way, is that you're so intentional about every part of your life, about your marriage, your fatherhood, now grandparenting, your job, your company, the way you deal with people. You're a thinker. You're always thinking about how can I do this better and what can I do? What does that look like as you've gotten older and you're thinking about these years? You talked about legacy and all this stuff. So what are you doing to actively make that happen? What's the practical things that you're doing, whether it's physically, spiritually, whatever, to extend life, to make your life healthier, to make your life more impactful? What are some of the strategies you're implementing? Because I know you've got some.
I've got one or two. Well, on the business side, which is a big part of my life. It's not the only part of my life, but it's a big part of my life. Came out of the corporate world in September of 1992. That would be 33 years ago now. And thought that I was going to do this for a little while, Mark. You know the bigger story, and I'm not going to try to tell the bigger story here, but thought that I was going to be here for a little while and do this and maybe go back into the marketplace. And here I am 33 years later. And 4 years after I came here, I bought out one of the principals, one of the guys who founded the company. So in October of 1996, I became one of the primary owners of the firm. In 2022, spring of 2022, I bought out my last business partner, and I now own the whole thing, so that I can speak into the future of the firm with just one voice. I've had good business partners, and but at the end of the day, when there's two of you, there's always going to be a blended voice, and there's always going to be a little bit of a difference of opinion. It's just, ours have never really come to the point of being, outright battles or anything, but there's just always, you're always speaking with a blended voice. And at that point in my life, I just said to Nancy, I said, let's buy this so that this legacy that God has started inside of me, my vocational legacy, will exist in and through Generis, right? So that we can speak into the future of Generis and make sure that its best years are after we're done, whenever that is, right? And then over the last couple of years, and Mark, honestly, I've had my time with the Lord, just saying, hey, God, you know what, how old I am? I mean, I feel good. I haven't lost my fastball. I still love leading. I love pushing the levers. I love this, but I am in the last stages of my, best years.
Sure.
I don't know how long that would last, but and nobody has said to me, Jim, I think it's time for you to go. In fact, I've had clients like, dude, you're where you are. You still got your fastball. And one of the pastors of the largest churches in America said to me after we had dinner together, he said, man, you don't need to lay it down. You still got your fastball. Right. So affirm that in me. But I knew that I had to find somebody else to lead this company. And and I can't, bro, in my prayer time, I was saying to the Lord, hey, the clock's ticking, right? The clock's ticking on all this. And I could just see God is like, oh, come on. Here we go again. You go out there and tell me about how much you love me and how much you trust me and how much you believe in me. And you don't even trust me to raise up a successor inside. I said, God, I don't see who it is. I don't know who it is. And the Lord said, but I do. And you need to rest in that. Dude. And in God's kindness, he raised up Frank Beeler. Longer story, God's story again. We won't try to tell the whole thing today. And we named Frank our CEO in February of this year. And our team, they love it. And I love it. He is an amazing guy. He is truly the guy that God wants to lead this into the next season, along with Brandon, our president, and Leanne, our chief marketing officer. So, I feel like my legacy work-wise is headed in a really good direction. Our best days are going to be after I'm done. I'm available. I'm still in the car. I'm one of the 4 people in the car. I'm in the back seat now. I'm not in the front left seat. I've had that seat for a long time, and now I'm in the back left seat, kind of taking a nap. And it's like, hey, if y'all need me. By the way, if I wake up and y'all have turned somewhere and I don't know where we are, I'll bring it to your attention. But other than that, you're probably not going to hear. And those guys are not going to do that. Yeah. Because they've been around me enough to know that if I had another 20 years to lead this firm, they're pretty clear on what I would do with it. And that's what they're doing with it. Right. Yeah. So there's that family legacy. really does revolve around kids and grandkids and trying to sow faith into my grandkids with 6 little ones. Every morning, Mark, every morning I'm up. I started, several years ago, I became an early riser, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. I became an early riser right before the pandemic. For a long time, I was getting up early. I'd spend a little time in a devotional, but it wasn't intentional time in the Lord. And then in fall of November of 2023, I had just a revelation from God that happened at a conference. And God said to me, he said, I want to renew your life through discipline. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. That was kind of the two words that I heard. And so the Lord spoke to me, and kind of as I was working that out between the end of November and the end of 2023, God was saying to me, I want you to put all of your devotionals down and only read my word. Now, bro, I had some good devotionals. I mean, Tim Keller, Paul Tripp, R.C. Sproul, Tozer. I mean, I've got good devotionals. These are not unbiblical. They're great stuff. And God said, I want all that aside. So I bought a brand new study Bible, and I started reading it on January 1st, 2024. Got me a Bible reading plan that I love. Got it from Gospel Coalition, and it walks me through an Old Testament, New Testament reading every day with the Psalms interspersed. And about 3 months into that, Mark, it actually came from somebody else, another pastor that I know who was doing something like this. I started to realize, hey, so the discipline, I want to renew your heart through the discipline of daily reading of my word. That's kind of putting all that together. And about 3 months into that, I was like, wait, what if I did this for 6 years in a row and I create 6 Bibles and give these to my grandkids?
Oh, wow.
And so I'm a year and 8 months plus 9 days into that. And so Noah is getting the Bible. It was a brand new study Bible that I had last year. So all the notes, all the highlighting, everything I wrote in there, Mark, was from 2024. And there's 2 moleskins that go along with it. I filled up one moleskin and I started on and half another one. So and I haven't fit, Nancy asked me the other day, she said, when are you going to give it to him? I said, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
I've thought about age 15 or 16, somewhere around when he gets his driver's license, because it's not something he would understand right now. I want him to be a little older. It's probably not high school graduation, but sometime before that. But anyway, we'll figure that out. So now I'm on number 2. I bought a brand new, so that one put away. And now I got a brand new study Bible, another one for this year. Everything that I've written in that Bible was written in 2025, right? And I'm writing an introduction into both of them on the front and say, hey, Noah, I started this Bible in 2024. I was thinking of you. I haven't finished everything that I'm going to write to him, but it's got an introduction.
Yeah.
So what I realized is, and this is not original to me, I've sown about as much legacy as I can sow into my kids. I can fine tune that. But I can sow a legacy of faith into my grandchildren and give them something that God gave to me, which is, his revelation of to me. And so every day I'm asking 2 things as I'm reading the Bible. Lord, confirm for me something that I already knew and show me something I never knew. So like yesterday, day before yesterday, 1 Corinthians 11. Did you know that there's a verse in there that Paul actually said to the Corinthians church that God gave factions in the church in order to identify those who are truly his? I'd never seen that before in my life.
Yeah.
And how many times have I read 1 Corinthians 11? Right. He gave us factions in the church so that we can identify those who are truly his. Never seen that. As many times as I've been in the Bible, as many times as I've been in 1 Corinthians.
Right.
And so what God began to speak to me on November 28th of 2023, that's kind of the legacy that I'm trying to sow into those. There's other things too, spending time with them, intentional time. And then in my morning prayers, Mark, this is out of a song, but it's just a thing that I think of every morning. I'm praying Jesus over my grandkids.
Yeah.
Jesus, I want to pray you into their life, that you would be their solace, you would be their savior, you would be the only thing that they're focused on, that at some point in their life, they would look back and hardly even, if at all, remember a life apart from him. And that's who I want you to make my grandchild. And meanwhile, would you draw my kids closer to you? And also, would you draw my wife closer to you as you draw me closer to you, right? And so that's been for me, and that has not been the mark of my life over a long time. I've prayed, but not those prayers on a daily basis. And I've been consistent about that for a year and like 8 months now. So, those are probably the two things that I'm doing. I'm trying to take better care of myself. You've got to learn to be kind to yourself. And, that means making sure that you've got a good doctor that takes good care of you. I have heart history in my family. So, I've been under the care of a cardiologist for years. My dad died at age 48 and my mom had heart disease. So there's things I can't control. So you got to be faithful about that. I've got colon cancer in my family. So I get screened every 5 years. My doc told me some years ago, he said, as a man, there's a lot of things you can die of, but there's two things you don't need to die of. And one of them is colon cancer and the other one is prostate cancer because we can screen for that. If we catch it early enough, we can deal with it, right?
Yep.
So it's, it's a long answer, but those are kind of the things that I'm thinking about. I probably do still eat more cookies than I need to, but that's just a thing, I do eat tailgate food. Well, and then there's tailgate food when you go to Georgia games. So there's that problem you got to deal with. But
that's right.
On the whole, I'm trying to do a better job of taking care of myself just because that matters, man, if you're going to run the race.
Yeah. What are some of the practical things you do on the physical side from exercise, working out, diet? I'd love for you to share any practical things that you're learning about that or have learned or that you implement.
Yeah, I'm in a little bit of a bad space right now because I've got a bad knee and it's kept me out of the gym doing what I like to do, but I'm on the mend. I had platelet-rich plasma injection a few weeks ago, and my doc says, you're going to be better. You're going to be fine. You just got to give it a little time to work. But what I like to do is I like to mix in both cardio and weight work. One of the things I learned is you got to do both. Then here was the thing that I added in about 4 years ago. There's several of them, several of the franchises that do it. The one that's closest to me is Stretch Zone. So it's not just strength, Mark. It's mobility and the ability and flexibility. And if you're getting stretched out and they teach you some stretch rhythms on a regular basis, it helps you to stay in just, at my age, in your 70s, where you have got some stamina, you've got the ability. And, once I get over my knee problem, I'll be back hiking with my grandkids again, which they love to do and things like that. So it's that. And, travel is the big boogeyman for me when it comes to nutrition. When I'm at home and Nancy and I are cooking, I've got a lot more control over that. But it's when, I'm out with clients and they order lunch in and I'm looking at all the choices there. And I was like, man, they ain't a good choice on the table there. They're not a single good choice on the table.
Yeah.
And that's when you just got to decide you're going to minimize whatever's there. You just got to minimize it, make the best out of the worst. And then when you're not there, just control it as much as you can. Sugar is my demon. I know sugar is my demon.
Yep.
Snacking is, when I don't control it, can get out of control. And so I've learned to try to keep healthy snacks around and just kind of keep that, keep that monster at bay. Hey, stand back. I know that a bag of potato chips would be really good, but what about an apple instead? That's
right. Yeah, apples are great. I'm a big apple guy. I like the Honey Crisp apple. You ever had those?
Bro.
They're the best to me.
This is apple harvest season, so they're starting to come in.
And they're pricey. They're expensive, and every time we buy them, I think, gosh, this is a lot of money, but it's such a healthier thing.
But you just gotta, you gotta choose it, man. You gotta decide. It's just you gotta decide that you're going to own that, and it's not going to own you. And I've had seasons in my life where it owns me a little bit more, and my weight shows it at that point in time, and my fitness. And then when you're owning that and kind of mastering that, is the other is true as well. But weights and cardio, I try to mix those up when I'm going full speed, and then just put in the stretching routine. That's really helped me a lot.
Yeah. People talk about the stretching thing a lot, and I'm with you on the mix of stuff. So the last few months for me have been a real turnaround. This last year and a half was kind of hard. There's a lot of transition for us and job transition and trying to figure out what to do. And I was probably depressed a little bit in the middle of that, just trying to identity stuff and all that stuff that happens that we never outgrow. By the way, it's a constant thing. No. And but there was a big moment for me in the middle of summer, late June, and I'm actually going on a big trip next week. In fact, when your episode comes out next Tuesday, I'll be gone. I'll be in North Carolina on a 5-day wilderness hike.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with a ministry
Wow.
out of Colorado Springs called Restoration Project. I don't know if you know those guys, but they do a lot of men's things. A friend of mine was doing it, and anyway, that's the whole story. But I was going to go hunting this fall with my brothers, like we usually do up in South Dakota, and that didn't work out. We couldn't make it fit, and I was really sad about it because I was like, I needed some adventure.
Yeah.
I needed something to work towards, and this popped up, and excuse me, and Jenda saw it first, and she's like, I just feel like there's something on this for you. I looked at it looked great, called my buddy, got the inside scoop, tell me all about it, signed up that day, and literally changed. Like that day, I was like, okay, I'm not going to go on this trip and be the struggle bus. I'm not going to be the guy that they're waiting on. And I didn't even know who was going at that point.
Exactly.
I've met them all now, but like, I'm a leader. Like, I'm not going to be the guy that's struggling.
I ain't gonna be last place. I ain't gonna be last place bringing up the beer.
And that's not the point of the trip, but just for me, I was just like, if anything, I want to be able to help other people if they need help or whatever. So I changed my diet. I got involved in a workout group. You probably heard of F3.
Oh yeah, I know what F3 is. Yep.
So I'm doing F3 with another friend, and that has been life changing. And I've lost 25 pounds in 2.5 months. And
Wow, dude.
I feel great.
Come on.
I feel so good.
Come on.
And I feel strong.
Come on.
It's not just the weight anymore. In fact, the scale is once a week. I just check in to see how it's going. But like, I'm not really worried about that number. I know it'll take care of itself. It's really just more about how you feel and the fitness, the strength of it, and all that. Because you said it. To me, it's really about the why is the bigger issue. There's a lot of ways to work out, a lot of ways to eat well. Like, you figure that out. The why is the reason. It's like, I had a lady on, actually the episode that came out today, her and her husband, they were talking about, she's like, it was a grandmother thing for me. I wanted to be able to play with my grandkids and get on the floor and, whatever your thing is, that's great. But it really was a life-changing moment to say, okay, I've had a year of down. I've been on the couch. I've been watching too much TV. I'm eating too much junk. And also,
get off it.
Wow, those first few weeks were hard. Oh my gosh.
Man. Oh yeah, grueling.
You just don't realize and how stiff and just all of it, So anyway, it's a game changer for sure.
That's when you have to make Advil your friend. Temporarily.
I was like, where's that big bottle?
Where is that big bottle? Yeah. The one you get at Costco, right? The one you get at Costco.
That's right. Yeah, the discount version. So you mentioned this a minute ago, but one thing I wanted to ask you about is you do work with a lot of leaders. You have for decades. And you mentioned young leaders, and we can come back to that if you want to, but I really want to know what you're doing with your older leaders, because I know at your level, the clients you typically are working with personally, they're larger, they're a little bit more, I don't want to say more successful, but they have more tenure, they've got more at risk. And so you're at the high level coming in. So a lot of those guys are probably 40s, 50s, 60s, et cetera. What do you see as some of the common issues that those people are having that are kind of age related or season of life related? And how are you coaching them through that? If you had to pick 2 or 3 I see this over and over and over again. What are those things that you're seeing?
Well, once you kind of do the math and figure out how old somebody is, and let's just say they're 62. Let's just pick that number, for example. My question is going to be, hey, Pastor, how much longer are you going to do this?
Yeah.
Not sure. That's not a good answer.
Yeah.
That's not a good answer. Because at 62, you need to be thinking about your succession. Yeah. You don't need to be doing it next year or year after necessarily. But let's just say you decided you were going to step aside at 70. And notice I didn't say retire. I just said step aside.
Yeah, change roles.
Maybe do something else. Yeah. Change roles. Yeah. Change roles in your church. Not unlike what my pastor, Randy Pope, did at Perimeter Church. Randy didn't retire. He's now heading up Life on Life Missional Discipleship and a part-time teaching pastor at our church. But he's a founding pastor, and he passed the baton to Jeff Norris 6 years ago.
Yeah. And, we just went through the same thing at Highlands. I know you know that.
I do know that. Yeah.
It's been really fascinating to have a front row seat to that. Yeah. And, when I was at the college, my boss was the president, Mark Pettis. So he's now our pastor.
Now the pastor.
Early 40s, Pastor Chris Hodges, now the founding pastor, kind of the same thing that Randy did. And to your point, our guy, PC, we call him, PC's just 60, I think, or 61 now, maybe.
Yeah, he's 61.
Super young, super healthy. He could probably do it another 20 plus years if he wanted to. But his mindset was so similar to what you're saying. And I'm not going to hijack your thing, but it's just really been fascinating to watch that handoff, because he had something else he felt like God wanted him to do and is thriving in his new role. Yeah, anyway, but yeah, it's interesting to watch. Go ahead.
For many of them, Mark, what I see is that their identity has gotten caught up in what they do.
Oh, wow.
And
like
it makes it hard to let go. It
never stops, does it? It's always
it's hard to let go. It's hard to let go. So, somebody asked me, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, they said, Jim, as you watch pastors get to that point where they need to start thinking about stepping aside, and they don't. What are the reasons for that? It was at a table, at a dinner, at a conference. I mean, I was sitting next to a guy who coaches and counsels pastors all the time, head of a big ministry that does that, right? And I looked at him and I said, I got my answer. He said, I got mine. And I said, identity and finances. And he's like, oh my God. He said, that's exactly what I had. I was like, yeah. I said, it's just they get caught up in too much of, and it doesn't make you a bad person, but it means that you've got a blind spot. And you're going to have to deal with that your identity got caught up in who you are. And when you're not the senior pastor of XYZ church, you have a hard time dealing with that. It's like, Mark, I'll be honest with you. For me, I determined that I was not going to hand this when it became pretty clear to me that Frank was likely the guy. Succession has 2 parts to it. The one who's handing off the baton and the one who's receiving the baton. And I wanted to make sure that I could hand the baton off, and I've dealt with my demons, whatever they are. And mine were identity and control. And so I was praying and I was spending time with the Lord. I mean, there were days, Mark, when I would hold my business card up. It's right there on my desk where I spend my quiet time, in the morning. I would pick my business card up and I would look at it. And it said CEO and principal. And I was like, okay, Lord, this is not who I am. This is just what I do, right? This is not who I am. This is what I do, right? And it was only after I made peace with that I determined I was going to go full speed with the handoff to Frank. And a lot of guys can't do that, Mark. It just, when you see succession that doesn't go well, probe it. That's going to be one of the predominant issues. Maybe not every time, but it's going to be one of the predominant issues. Yeah, control's not going to be, it's hard. It's hard, man. And then for a lot of them, and Mark, this is surprisingly, even in some larger churches, their church has not set them up for success financially so that they can step aside if they want to. See, financial freedom is not some amount of money that you have. It's the ability to make choices, and money's not the primary factor, right? Mm-hmm. So at age 65, let's just say that's your number, or 70 or whatever, or 68, whatever, that you could stay or leave, and money is not the deciding factor either way, right? And that's both you and your board, whether it's elders or board or however you're run. That has to be a collective decision between the two of you. So I see that a lot. The other thing I see, Mark, is entrenched thinking that's not informed by relevant examples. Okay. So I hear people in my space, being that I coach people, churches and pastors on giving development. Hey, well, how's church going, Pastor? Well, got all these young families coming in and, this and that and the other. Well, how those younger families are when it comes to giving. Well, I just play dumb, right? Because I do spend time with younger leaders. I do know what they think, right? And they're like, well, I don't know. What are you talking about, Pastor? He said, well, they're just not good givers. And I was like, well, do you think that's your church thing, or is that a generational thing? Well, I think it's a generational thing. And I was like, well, let me just show you a little bit of research from the Barna Institute and, kind of show you what that says, because it actually says that the propensity to give among millennials is actually higher than it is among boomers. I said, I was a part of that research study. This is the slide, and I've got the slide on my laptop. And they're like, oh, man, but they don't give to a church. And I was like, well, they give to a church. And the question is, who gives to a church? Well, they don't give as much money as people our age. I said, come on, Pastor. See, you didn't have any money when you were 28. We're not talking about how much money. You're saying they're not even givers. You're saying they don't even have a heart to give. And I'm telling you they do. And what that makes it is that's your church problem, not a generational problem. So now let's talk about how we're going to deal with that, right? So they never, or people that are trying to figure out a strategy to reach millennials and Gen Z, and the youngest person in the room is 55 years old. How you going to get that figured out, bro? You ain't got anybody who's even in the room to represent that point of view. And then, of course, some of that is just the reluctance, unwillingness to make themselves available to be mentors. And, I just made that decision some years ago. It was not a small thing. It was kind of a part of this idea of what am I going to leave behind? Generis is part of what I'm going to leave behind. But Mark, I have paid, it feels like $500 million in dumb tax. And I'd like for some people to know that, right? Yeah. Not the things I did great. Now, that list is pretty short. The dumb things that I've done is like, bro, let me tell you, I've got one guy right now that I've been mentoring for 6 or 7 years, 32 years old. He's wired up a lot like me. I know what he's going to do. He says to me sometimes, he said, you're creepy. You know that? I said, what do you mean? He said, just like you're reading my mail before I've even known there was mail. And I was like, yeah, I was 32 and I was like you. And my goal in life is to help you not be the idiot I was when I was 32. And so far, you're doing pretty good. Because you're not the idiot I was, right? And that's the value, man, of just leaving stuff behind, of trying to figure out, in my generation, for the people. So I've got the people who think they know what they're reading all the stuff that's in the newspapers, and most of that is just not correct. It makes a nice headline, but it's not a reality. It's not the reality that I see in the rooms that I'm in. And I'm in the room with some of the most amazing up and coming, both Gen Z and millennial leaders in America. These are the people who are going to pastor the churches that my grandkids are going to go to. That's right. And that's not why I do it, but somewhere along the way, I figured out, dang, I got a dog in the fight here. If I can mentor these young leaders, who knows, but that one of them might end up being the pastor to my kids or grandkids at some point in time. And so it's just kind of, as I look around, there's we're forming conclusions without actually listening to the people who are in that space. And then we're having a hard time with the succession issues. And that's in my generation, man, Yeah. And so, to the extent that I get a chance to speak into that, it's not my job per se in some of those things, but to the extent that they invite me into those conversations, I do have a chance to speak a word and maybe hopefully alter the trajectory a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. I know it's surprising that I have an opinion about that and I express it to people, but it's not surprising to you, is it?
No, I want the opinion. I'm going to be disappointed if you don't have one.
I wasn't really sure what Jim meant when he said that. Has no one ever said?
I've never said that. Yeah. I always knew.
Nobody.
One of my favorite memories of us together, and I don't even know if you'll remember this, but we were doing a lot of work for you and not just your clients, but we started doing more work for you guys corporately. Mm-hmm. This was probably... I don't even remember the year this was. Well, yeah, I do too. It was the late aughts. It was like 08, 09, whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Because Alan Walworth was my business partner.
Yep. And then we were doing some work for one of your competitors as well. I don't know if you remember this. And it was no conflict. It was just two separate deals. And you didn't like it. And we had I'll never forget, I was moving into a new office suite. It was on a weekend. It was a Saturday or Sunday. And you called me. You were hot. And so we were, it was a typical misunderstanding, and you didn't know everything, and we hadn't talked and all the stuff. So anyway, we talked through it, and it was a challenge for me because I've had and have so much respect for you, and I was like, man, did I do something wrong? I don't think I did. And I'm in real time, I'm processing, and you were kind, but you were very upfront about what you thought.
Pretty firm, wasn't I?
Pretty firm. But what I loved about you is we talked through it, and I don't know what I did, but I tried to keep up my end of the conversation. And at the end of the day, you were like, okay, like you just had to talk it out, and you had your opinion, and then you listened to reason and wisdom. We talked it through it, and I don't know if we made some changes, whatever. But anyway, but it was such a great moment for me because what I saw was you care a lot about what you do. You care about your company. I mean, you should.
Yeah.
But you also were wise. You listened to me. We had an open. It wasn't a one-sided conversation, and your opinion adjusted accordingly. Whatever the thing was we were trying to work out, and that was such a good lesson for me. Of we can have, and there's so few friends over the span of life that I have that kind of relationship with. Like, I know where you stand, and that's a funny example, but like, we never pull any punches. We always tell the truth. You've coached me through some personal times. We've had business conversations. We've worked together. We haven't worked together. We've done all the things, but the underlying thing has never changed and never will change.
Never changed.
The respect, the kindness, the love. So I love that about you and your strong opinion.
I forgot about that incident. You're right.
It was a marking moment for me.
I was hot.
You were
I was a little hot
You came in
about that.
hot.
I was a little hot.
Came in hot on two wheels, as they say. I mean, I was like on the phone, like, what is happening? But anyway, but it's interesting what you're talking about, though. I don't know. I think it is worse with older leaders. What do they call that, confirmation bias or whatever, where they're trying to justify something.
You've already decided what's going to happen, and you're just finding the evidence to support that.
And that's certainly not age specific. That's people do that. But I do think as we get older, it's easier to go there because we think we know, we think we have all the answers, we've got experience, all the things that go with that. So it is hard. I remember when I was talking to William Vanderbloemen on here, and we were having a similar conversation, and he was saying, he's in a green room. It's a clear line between, or not just a green room, but in his work, a clear line between those who are growing and learning and still asking good questions, and those who are like, boy, it used to be great, the good old days thing. And I do think as older leaders, we have to watch that. And what you're saying is such a big part of that, because we just get locked in, and it's like you can't change It's hard to change perspective once they grab on that hard.
But I think, thinking about it, Mark, I got that. I had a mentor. He was a spiritual mentor and a life mentor of mine that just spoke so much into me. And he was just constantly talking about being teachable. No matter how old you get, make sure you always remain teachable. He actually passed away in 2007. Had a stroke, and one of the toughest moments in my life was I had to be with his family when we decided to turn off the life support. Just gutted me. But he was the one who said this to me. He said, if you're not going to be teachable, you might as well just go on down to the funeral home and check in and go ahead and close the casket. I've never forgotten that. Just check in. Just close the casket. I'm done. There's no point in me living any longer because I'm not teachable. That's how important he said it was. And he would hit me with that all the time. He said, man, you're just not teachable in this. You've already formed an opinion. You're coming in the room and all kinds of smart people are saying things, and you're not hearing any of it because you've already decided. Yeah. And that's, and so I've tried to get better with that over the years. And I think the thing that you have to do is you just have to decide, I'm not going to speak with the intention of replying. I'm not going to listen trying to formulate my reply. I'm going to listen and truly listen. Like Stephen Covey said in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he said, seek first to understand and then to be understood. I'm going to be such a good listener that I'm empathically listening to what you're trying to say so that my response is actually an accurate response, not just a biased response out of what I wanted you to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big lesson that I've learned from Jinda since we've been married. Just what we would call active listening, same thing.
Active listening, same thing. And
really just not sitting there the whole time waiting for your turn to talk, but actually and there's another quote that I use all the time, and this quote doesn't sound like it goes with this person. I think it came from Craig Ferguson, the late night host, who I'm not a fan of, but this was really wise. But the quote, whether it's him or not, wherever the quote says, does this need to be said? Does it need to be said now? Does it need to be said by me now? Or now by me? And so
that's a good
all
word.
Those things,
that's a good word right there.
Oh yeah. Especially in marriage. but in all relationships, yes, 100%.
I live in this constant tension, Mark, with this bubble above my head. So the thought is there. And most of what's in the bubble in my head does not need to come out here. It just needs to stay up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the hard part about being in the role that you're in, the role that I'm in. The years that I worked for the college, they were awesome. But the hardest part was I'm not the final say here. I knew when I went there, that would be, Jenna said, that's going to be the hardest part. You're going to have to submit to a bigger thing. Mm-hmm. And it was a good season for me to learn that lesson. Yeah. And also when I came back into this world and started a new company, I was like, oh, I'm home again. But you do get in this place of you don't really answer to anybody except your wife and your clients. Oh man. It's some of us are gifted to do that, but there does have to be a level of humility and a level of even if it's not an official board, you need some people in your life. And you've always been that for me. I can call you and go, hey, here's a thing. And you'll go, oh, you'll just cut right to the thing. But we all need that because it is so easy to get distracted.
So I give you that answer of like, hey, Mark, you can do that, but I wouldn't.
Right.
And you're like, oh, well then.
You're welcome. You're welcome to go there. I've seen that done before. You can do it.
Didn't work out for them, but you might be the one. It might work out for you, Mark. I don't know.
Right. I'm not putting my money on it, but maybe.
None.
Yeah. Call me in a couple weeks. Let me know how that went.
Yeah, holler back. Let me know how that worked out for you.
Yeah. So you've mentioned this a couple times, but just about your willingness to learn. Who are you learning from right now? Who are some of the people speaking in your life, whether it's someone we all know or someone we don't know? And you don't have to say a name if you don't want to, but who's speaking into your life actively, and what are you learning right now?
Bro, let me tell you something. This is probably not going to surprise you. I'm probably learning more from younger leaders than I am from people my age.
Yeah, that's great.
I love watching them learn and then for them to just kind of say it, live it, kind of do it out loud. And I look and I'm just like, you might be mentoring me as much as I'm mentoring you. I might be learning more from you than you're learning from me. It's fresh. It's the perspective of the day. It is the perspective that's going to drive a lot of things that are going to happen from here on out, both in the church and culture and society. There's some senior people, the guy that I listen to a lot, I still do, even though he's deceased, Tim Keller. Mm-hmm. There's so much wisdom on life and theology. What I love is that he was one of the smartest guys I've ever seen in terms of theology. I had the privilege of working with him in his very first capital campaign in 1998. I worked with him in his last capital campaign in 2016 and 17. And of course, he's a part of my tribe, the PCA. Yeah. And he was always so kind to me, just in saying things like, when I come back, I would see him occasionally at a PCA gathering or a church gathering, and he would speak and he would say things like, how's your family? How's your family? And so what I've always appreciated was that he kept it real, even when he got really, really big. And he was very, very deep theological, and he could go there. But for most people, he kept it simple. And that's how he reached New York with the gospel, was taking very complex things and breaking them down and making them understandable to the everyday person. So I've always appreciated his voice and the way he articulated that. His last major interview, which I think was spring of 22, if I remember correctly, with Carrie Newhoff. It was an extended interview, about an hour and a half, where he talked about what he would do if he were to start all over again. And you know what he said? He would base all of his preaching on identity. He said, we are obsessed with identity today. And he said, if I had to start over, he said, and the reason I'm not going to start over is because I would have to reconfigure everything around identity. And he said, I just can't do that. I can't do that. But I just like his writing. He wrote on so many things. And there's probably some other people that I do listen to a fair amount. There's not one voice. I just listen to a multitude of voices. I try to listen to people who, one of the things that's been helpful to me, Mark, and probably the last 4 or 5 years is a friend of mine challenged me to listen to and read the works of people that I don't agree with.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you something, man. It has rounded off some of my some of my edges, to listen to perspectives on things that when I was 39 years old, I would have just said, that's BS. And now I wouldn't say that's BS. I would say, hey, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I'm interested in hearing how you got to that place. Not to judge you. I just want to understand, how did you get there? Because I know how I got to my view and your view and my view on whatever it is, theology, life, culture, ethics, and whatever it might be.
That's so often the why, that journey is more informative than the result.
Oh,
man.
man.
You learn more, hearing that.
Yeah. So I think it's important if you're blue, listen to and to some red. And if you're red, listen to some blue. Make sure you've got that in your life, because otherwise you just become an echo chamber of your own thoughts. And that's just not helpful in life. So that's probably the three main places where I'm learning stuff.
Okay. That's great. As I've been doing this now for a few months, and we're typically a little bit ahead. So I'm learning things as I go. And the first few episodes we did, this was not a question I asked, but I realized about halfway through to this point that I need to start asking this question. And that is, how has your faith grown or changed as you've gotten older? Or another way of saying that is, what are you learning about faith and walking with God that maybe you didn't know before? Because I feel like this season of life, 50s, 60s, 70s, like there's a lot of different things that are happening. Just like every other part of life, there's always new things. What are you learning about faith?
I'll give you two things. One of them is, some years ago, one of the guys who's a friend of mine, been a long time friend of mine, he started off as one of my Timothys. I actually saw him come to faith, saw him get baptized. Oh gosh, back in the 90s. And he has become a Barnabas to me, and he's become a Paul to some others. But we were just having breakfast one day, and he's like, man, he said, I've never asked you this question, but he said, I bet you've seen some crazy stuff in the church during your career. And I said, well, I spend a lot of my life in the vault, which means I can't talk about a lot of the stuff that I've seen and heard.
Yeah.
And then he said this, Mark. He said, what has that done to your faith? And nobody had ever asked me that question.
It's a great question.
So I've seen some horrible things that have happened that pastors have had to keep in secret. I've seen some great joys and victories that have happened that pastors can't talk about publicly. And so when he asked me, I had never had that question, and I knew exactly what the answer is. As soon as he asked me the question, I knew what the answer was. I said, it has intensified my faith in that I am certain. Not that I ever wasn't certain, but I am absolutely certain that the church is God's, because if it were not, it would be bankrupt and failed just based on what I've seen.
Yeah.
Just
we would have destroyed it.
So that's hard so that's what makes it hard for me, Mark, and I'm not judging these people. I'm just saying it makes it hard for me to understand a perspective of someone who's seen a fraction of what I've seen.
Sure.
And they've said, I love Jesus, I just don't love the church. And I'm like, well, you can't do that. You can't love a person and not love the person's bride. You can't do that. So that was just really, and I'd never thought about that before. So that's one piece. The second piece is this, and it kind of goes back to that 29, 39, 49, 59. Man, I am not so sure about some of the things theologically that I was absolutely sure of when I was 39 years old. And that doesn't mean my faith is wishy-washy. I mean, I'm in a PCA church. It's the box is not that big. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, those ditches have been dug deep.
And in some of our PCA churches, it's like that big. I love them, love the brothers.
Yeah.
But so with that in mind, but I'm not as sure about some of those things that I was really sure of when I was 39. There's no need to go through a list of those things, but I was really black. I had a lot of black and white when I was 39. I still got black and white, but I've got a fair amount of gray sitting in there. And the years have done that. the way I say it is this, Mark. There is an effect that occurs with the multitude of sunrises and sunsets that only occurs in and through that. You can't learn it in college. You don't learn it in a book. You learn it by getting up and going to bed day after day and watching life happen in front of you. And that's what it's done to me.
And there's our quote moment that I'll use to promote the episode. That's
there
great, man.
That's
such a great answer, though. I'm so appreciative of that. That's so insightful.
Yeah, it's why it's hard for
so
me with the whole deconstruct narrative, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like you haven't seen a fraction of what I've seen, and I haven't deconstructed. I'm not saying that makes it better from I'm a better person. I'm just like, you know, you could if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Or you could just go in the other. I mean, I have a friend of mine. In fact, it's my mentor. My mentor went to a very moderate seminary that actually became liberal while he was there. And people would say, why did you go there? He said, like, you know, everybody who goes there, some of them come in. He said, it made me mad. He said, I became more conservative when I went there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that for me is sort of like in the face of seeing all of those things that somebody would say, I'm walking away from the church. I'd like, no, I love the church even more because I know who holds the church in his hand. It is God Almighty, the God who is, the God who was, and the God who is to be. And that's the one who holds the church in the palm of his hand. And I'm more convinced of it today than I was when I started this work, having seen all the things I've seen.
Yeah, that's such a good word. And you I'm sure you remember, you know, I went through that terrible season 10, 15 years ago, and I was that guy.
I watched you, bro. I watched you. We sat on my back porch. And I don't know if I ever told you this. I cried after you left. I cried. I was so sad for you.
Yeah.
Because I knew where your heart was. I knew where you had come from. And my cry was to the Lord, I don't know how long it takes, but make sure he finds his way back to the path to you. And you did.
I did.
Right. You did. It was hard, but I cried for you because I was just like, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
you were looking through a hard season.
You know, I never stopped believing in him and what he was about. Like I knew that to be true. The people effect and the herd and the things that you're talking about. And, you know, I've had those conversations many times about stuff and friends of ours and all that. It can be discouraging. It can be disheartening. It throws a curveball. The enemy uses it in such a big way. It's why the weight on our leaders pastorally is so heavy. But at the end of the day, that was the conclusion was, you know, it is imperfect. I can't change it. I need to be praying for these people. They need to be praying for me. I wouldn't probably do any better if I was in their shoes. You know, the sunrises and sunsets thing is real because at some point you realize I'm not excusing what someone may or may not have done, but I get it. Stuff happens and it's hard. So anyway, but yeah, that's a good word. That's a great word.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for asking the question.
I could do this all day long. I wish we had more time. And we'll do it again at some point. But hey, I love you. I'm so thankful for you. You've been such a great mentor, coach. You know, when I talk about you, I say this all the time. I think I've told you this, but you're a second father to me. You know, I had a great father. Thank God I had a wonderful father.
Yes, you did.
And you were there for me when he passed away. You helped me process that. You've always been there for me in business and in life. And you and Nancy have been so kind to Jenda and I, or Jenda and me, and just so grateful for you. And one of my only regrets, I just wish we could spend more time together. I just wish we could. Yeah. But
one of us would have to move for that to happen. So that's not going to happen because you ain't leaving Birmingham and I'm not leaving Atlanta.
Yeah. But
so we'll just have to make it happen when we can make it happen.
That's right.
Okay.
So I love you, man. Appreciate you.
Love you, bro. Thanks for the invite.
Well, I don't know if you could tell there at the end, but I really did not want that episode to end. I could talk to Jim for hours and hours and hours, and we often do. We've had some sessions on the back porch. We've had some sessions at his cabin up in the mountains. We've traveled together and been to conferences together, and I just can't get enough of Jim's wisdom and his energy. And you can see why he's such an inspiration to me. And I loved what he talked about the fact that there's just nothing like the sunrises and sunsets of a lifetime to teach you the lessons that you need to learn, and you can't learn them any other way. And for those of us in this 50 plus category, as we are learning and growing and becoming all that God wants us to be, figuring out our identity, figuring out who we are, We know that to be true, and we have to lean into it, keep learning, keep seeking after God and finding out what He has for us. And I don't know about you, but I had some really good takeaways from this episode that I'm going to try to implement in my own life, especially as a new grandfather. So it's exciting. Hey, thanks so much for being here. Next week's guest, honestly, I haven't decided yet. I've got two that are already recorded. I'm trying to decide which one to play for you. So it's either going to be Rex Davis. Rex is a great friend and a client of mine. He has a new book coming out called Free Fall. It's an amazing story about how he was in a parachute accident where the parachute did not open. Hence the title of the book, Free Fall. And just the amazing journey that he's had over the last 4 decades of his life in ministry, in business, in the Army, and how God has used him in incredible ways. And then we've also got coming up Jeff Moore. You might know Jeff Moore from Jeff Moore in the Distance. Back in the 90s, he was a significant Christian music artist. He was somebody that my brothers and I really looked up to. We went to all his shows and kind of followed him. In fact, the very first concert we ever did in our little band, we covered one of his songs. And years later, we have become friends with him. And my brother, Michael John, actually works with him in his ministry called Fellowship Adventures. And so it's one of those two guys coming up. But I just want you to know we've got some great episodes in the hopper for you. And it'll be a surprise. Tune in next week, and we will talk to you then. Thanks.